Hey, all, welcome back to a Tuesday, August 27th, 2024 edition here on the Chase Thomas podcast from still the aforementioned Chase Thomas coming to you live from Knoxville, Tennessee, Everything School HQ. On today's show, we got Rocky Top Insiders Ryan Schumpert. We don't have the full Tennessee Vols sports guys this week. Ethan away and Jack as well, but both will be back soon here on the Tennessee Vols sports guys here on this very program. But we still got Ryan in the fold to talk all things Tennessee Vols. We talk about the depth chart reactions with all the oars and what that looks like for Tennessee. We looked at Onis Konanbanny and his commitment, the 4-star blue chipper out of South Carolina, to add to a quietly loaded cornerback in class and secondary as a whole here in 2025. For the Vols, we talk about the running backs, why Desean Bishop might lead the Vols in running back touchdowns this fall. And then we preview the Chattanooga versus Tennessee game on Saturday. So all that and more coming up next here on today's edition of the Chase Thomas podcast. Don't forget, folks, before we jump into today's episode, that you can watch this show on YouTube, youtube.com/Chase Thomas podcast. Like and subscribe if you're watching us there. You can also listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or however you get your podcast. Make sure you subscribe if you are not already on your preferred podcast player. And then if you like what you hear, please make sure you hit that pause button right now and leave this show a 5-star rating and write us a review. It helps other people find the show, and it helps this very show continue to grow a little bit more each and every day. So if you take care of that today, that would be greatly appreciated. Go check out our homepage, chasethomaspodcast.com, for information about the show, past episodes, and all that good stuff that we've got cooking here in Knoxville's #1 independent Tennessee Vols sports podcast. All right, Uncle Darren, let's go.
The Chase Thomas podcast. My nephew needs me to record. See, I already hate it. I hate it.
All right, we're back here on the Chase Thomas podcast, where I'm still the aforementioned Chase Thomas, coming to you live from Knoxville, Tennessee, Everything School HQ, over there in Golden Hour country. Mr. Ryan Schumpert, also in Knoxville, Tennessee. Ryan, good evening, sir. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm full getting those lights off. They're too bright with the sun coming in at the different angles. Actually, I don't know if you saw, Chase, or any listeners, kind of the opposite today during Squirrel White's press conference. The lights went out.
Oh.
Right in the middle of his press conference. Lights went completely out. They had to get them back on and going again. So it was the opposite. I'm always keen to make a lights too bright joke. But at that point, there was no joke to be made because the lights were, in fact, not bright enough.
I was at Alcoa Bearden last year with Grant Ramey, friend of the pod over there at VolQuest, and we were in the building when the lights went off. The power went out, like in the middle of a play, of an important play late in the game for Bearden. Like pass was in the air, power went out, and they didn't redo the play. It was just an incompletion, and I never really understood that. Bearden ended up losing that game, and not for just that one play, but that blew my mind, where I was like, why? But we were just sitting there for like 20 minutes waiting for the power to go back on. It's like, what do you even do at that point if the power just doesn't come back on? You just blew the generator and there's no backup. I don't know what you do.
Well, I mean, the decrepit Coleman Coliseum, the lights went out for like 40 seconds in the game against Auburn this past year, and they kept on playing.
True.
So, you know, it's one thing about a high school football. It's bad enough that it happens. When it happens,
Yeah.
You got a Final Four basketball team and it's happening. It's particularly bad.
Ryan Schumpert, what are you going to do with your depth chart that you have printed out? Are you still going to keep scanning that? Do you even need Phil Steele's annual anymore when you have the depth chart for this Saturday ready and handy to know who's going to be starting, who's going to be playing, all that good stuff? It's all cleared up now.
It's all extremely cleared up. I mean, you really can't ask for a lot more. And I mean, I felt like the meme where my expectations for what they were going to tell us were low, but holy F. That's how I felt. I think we talked about it on here last week that I did an article predicting their depth chart. And I went back and found the depth chart from last year, the preseason one, and they had 20 oars. And I predicted 18 because I felt like more of them this year were just like really obvious who was going to start. 36 total, I believe, 35 in the starting lineup, I believe, in between the 29 starting spots. When you consider 7 special teams spots, they have 59 people listed as starters. Dylan Sampson, you might think he's running back 1. Nope. He's one of 5 running backs. James Pierce Jr. He's going to be a top 5 pick in the NFL draft, but we're currently uncertain if he's a top 3 edge rusher on this Tennessee team. So truly remarkable from Tennessee. They listed at the 22 offense and defensive spots, 3 guys as definitive starters, with Nico, Cooper Mays, and Javonte Spraggins. So impressive stuff for Tennessee. And honestly, while subjectively very frustrating from trying to do your job and have any sort of takeaways, do any sort of content off that, objectively a pretty funny troll from Josh Heupel.
I mean, I understand like being extra careful, and I don't even think it's gamesmanship. I just think they're just like
Chattanooga this week.
But I also think you're in game week prep anyway. Players know what the rotate like. I'm just gonna go ahead and guess if you and I polled the locker room today, like, what do you think the rotations are? Who do you think's going out in the first drive? Who do you think's gonna get the most snaps? I think they probably guess pretty accurately, don't you? Like, I don't really
probably.
You can't really hide that when you're game planning.
Yeah, exactly. Like some spots, yes, there probably is some uncertainty, but a lot of spots, it's like the defense. Most of the guys on defensive line. I mean, Amari Thomas and Bryson Easton were the first defense linemen on the defense tackles on the field like every game last year. So I don't think there's any reason to expect them not to be this year. And kind of the same thing at linebacker. I mean, I imagine they've been pretty consistent repping the starters there. So
Peely especially, man. Like, would we have to like? I understand like T-Lander's gonna play and he's good, but like it's not an or. Like Peely, if he's healthy, is going to be the first linebacker out here. Why are we making that one more complicated?
Yeah, exactly. And it was like the fact that I think it's the mic that Peely's listed at. And so it's like, it would be one thing if you had T-Lander and Arian Carter listed beside each other. But the fact that it's Peely and T-Lander and then Carter and Caleb Perry, it's like, okay, well, I think we all thought it was going to be Arian Carter and Keenan Peely. We knew it was going to be Keenan Peely. Sure, you could have been like, yeah, maybe T-Lander, maybe Arian Carter. But when you list it out like that, it's like, no, it's obviously going to be Arian Carter and Keenan Peely on the first snap. So,
did you make anything of Spillman making the 5 deep there and not Smith and Burns?
No, not Smith at all, because Smith's been out basically the entire preseason. So I didn't expect to see him there. You know, maybe a little bit over Burns, but not a ton. I mean, just the way William Inge and Tim Banks have talked about him this preseason, it did feel like he was kind of that pretty cemented as that 5th guy. But I guess in the range of the absolute nothing that they told us, maybe it was a little bit of something that they even put him on there and didn't just list 4 linebackers at 2 spots.
I thought the one, and I don't know if it matters, but the one that I circled, if we were going to say, like, what would be a surprise when we're looking at the first series for Tennessee on Saturday against Chattanooga, like who's out there for the offense that would be the most surprising with the first team, would be Thornton over Brazzell, I think. Yeah. And that's listed there. It says or Brazzell, but it's not Brazzell or Thornton, so that could mean nothing. But I did think that was interesting that Thornton was listed ahead. I guess we shouldn't even say it, and or. I don't know how to like. They made it complicated. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to understand this, but the fact that Thornton is listed first there was interesting. Do you think that's a possibility that he could come out first and Brazzell's actually not the first in the first group?
Yeah, I think it is possible, and it is something that, you know, I want to resist going too far in on, but like you look at the rest of the depth chart and the billions of oars, the guy at the top is who I think is going to start at every single spot besides that one. So maybe it means nothing. That's certainly possible. But it does seem like there's a theme there. The guy, you know, James Pierce is first. Dylan Sampson is first. Lance Hurd is first. John Campbell is first. Like at all the or battles, if you had to guess, if I had to go through and guess who do I think is going to be the starter, I would say the top guy. And every single one besides that one, where beforehand I would have said Chris. So yeah, that was kind of the one part that was at least a little bit interesting.
Yeah. And then you look at it, Christian Charles backing up Will Brooks, and then Jacoby Thomas is backing up Andre Turrentine. So I thought that was interesting too. Is that like we've been trying to figure out is it a Jacoby Will Brooks battle at one spot? It looks like it's actually a Christian Charles Will Brooks battle, and then maybe Turrentine and Jacoby Thomas share thing. I don't know how interchangeable it is, but Christian Charles, man, he might find his, like, if he can stay healthy, Christian Charles might find his way onto the field sooner rather than later and might get a lot of run on Saturday and might surprise some folks, it seems like.
Yeah, I could. Again, there's so little that we see during camp, and so little that they tell us, and certainly I could look really dumb on this come Saturday, or really more just come we get a few games into the season. But it feels like no one's stock has fallen more than Jacoby Thomas during fall camp, and yeah, I would say the running back room as a whole, the depth of that room is the one thing that I would definitively say I feel a lot better about.
Mm.
And then a handful of guys, it feels like they've had good camps. Talk about Aaron Carter, Josh Josephs, um, and then it kind of feels like Thomas is the one who the buzz has just absolutely dropped off at. And again, I do think some of it's interchangeable, but the fact that Turrentine is the definitive safety number one, the fact that he's listed by him is the co-starter with him, and again, the way they list it, you would think the backup doesn't seem to be a great sign for him.
No. What is a great sign though in the secondary is Onis Konanbanny, latest Vols 4-star recruit, corner, which I think makes 5 DBs in this class, Ryan. So it's a loaded class at this point because I think they only took 2 corners last cycle, if I remember correctly. With Caleb Beasley and who was the other? I'm blanking on the other.
Marcus Gorey.
Marcus Gorey, yeah. This one, you've got Trey Poteet, you've got Onis Konanbanny, then you've got Dylan Lewis, and then you've got Tyler Redmond, all corners in this class. So don't look now, but there's going to be a lot of young guys in the fold here going into next year, especially. And if you're not going to start rotating now, I don't know what you're going to do when you have this many young guys in this room going into next year, because I don't know what McMurray's going to do after this year at Tennessee. Obviously, barring some surprise transfers, I think Gibson and McCoy will be back as the corners next year. But Will Brooks is gone. That spot's opened up. Then you look at the other safety spot. We'll see what Turrentine, what kind of season he has. He might not, who knows there. But there's just a lot of spots. And I think they're going to have to, the youth movement has to start this year. And I think next year, we're going to see a lot of continued young corners really emerge. I'm pretty excited about the corners that Willie Martinez is bringing in here down the line. I think they have a lot of good bites at the apple. We'll see what Caleb Beasley looks like this fall. He was injured in spring, so he wasn't able. I wonder what his stock would look like if he had a full healthy offseason with this group, because there's opportunity, right? You have, I think in the depth chart, William Wright's the 5th corner right now, a walk-on.
Or both him and Caleb Beasley were listed.
Yeah, so they're right there. So Caleb Beasley, he's one injury away from playing.
Yeah.
Not to him. He's one injury away from rotating. Because Willie Martinez was rotating last year before guys went down. Like Kamal going down after the Alabama game kind of made him shrink his rotation and stuff. But he's been more apt to rotate than Banks back there. So I think you're going to see a lot of young guys at corner over the next 2 to 3 years. And it's kind of exciting. I think Tennessee fans have been kind of waiting for this and more athleticism at the corner spot. And I think it's going to start this year with 2 true sophomores in Gibson and McCoy. But what do you make of this haul for Willie Martinez in Tennessee right now?
I think a lot of what you said is accurate about the youth movement corner. I don't think a lot of it's going to apply to this group coming in, though, in my opinion. I mean, not that I'm grinding the film. It's a lot of low to mid 3 stars. Onis Konanbanny is a composite 4-star. He's a 3-star on both On3 and 24/7, which I think most people consider the 2 best recruiting sites. And even just with his background as a guy that came over from Europe, had not played a ton of football, he to me seems more of a developmental piece. So I don't really see any of those guys coming in and having a big role as freshmen. Now, the transfer portal can obviously change a lot of that. Some of them can be thrust into bigger roles. But I think you got to be excited about the guys that are on campus, especially the 4 underclassmen that we've talked about, with Beasley being the 4th one as a true freshman this year. And, to me, I think when I look at the cornerback room and starting to project not even a few years, just to the 2025 season, to me, the thing will be interesting this year is what the things have to look like for Jordan Matthews not to transfer. Because he's a true sophomore. They got 2 guys starting ahead of him are both true sophomores. So it's not like it's all right, you wait and here's the starting job. So how much do they rotate him in? How much is he involved in the rotation? And how much playing time does he have to see to be comfortable in coming back, because it's just, if Ricky Gibson and Jermon McCoy play really well, and Jordan Matthews could even be in the rotation some and get a good bit of snaps, but he's just not as good as those guys. Nature of today's college football would indicate that he'd probably transfer. So I think that's kind of an interesting thing that I would look at, because if Tennessee's able to get him back, I think you feel really good about the depth that you have of 3 guys that played a lot of sophomores going into their junior year, having some young guys that you can continue to develop, like you said, who knows what ends up happening with Jalen McMurray. But if you lose one of those guys, it's a little more proven, and maybe McMurray moves on too, then it becomes a little dicey. And then you kind of do start talking about, like, all right, can any of these freshmen coming in this class not necessarily be starters, but can they be valuable depth pieces that can play if called upon?
Yeah, that's fair. I don't know. I just think, I mean, for the corners you're talking about, where it's like 3, 4, depending on which site you're looking at in the composite stuff, but they're all top 69 corners. All 4 are in that group, in the 247. So I think it's just more of like, they're not all going to hit, but some of these guys are going to hit. I think Tennessee is going to... Why are you laughing?
Such a random cutoff.
Well, Redmond's 69.
Okay. Well, what is Redmond nationally as overall? Yeah, if you have this page pulled
up. I don't have it pulled up. I wrote about it over the weekend, so I just have that in the back of my mind, that four of the top 70. It's a better round number. Let's just do 4 of the top 70 corners in the 2025 class are Tennessee Vol commits.
But I mean, if you look at, and this isn't to say, like, I think you're right. Your overall point that you have 4 of those guys, like, some of them are going to hit, I think, over time. But at the same time, I mean, you go look at Tennessee's class in the composite, and I don't have it pulled up right now, but they got 24 commits. I think it's roughly 15, 16 of them are 4 plus 5 stars.
Mm-hmm. I think it's 14 right now. I remember
14.
correctly.
So you got 10 3-stars, and it's 4 of the 6 defensive back commits. So a lot of the lower guys in this class are defensive backs, which doesn't mean they can't be good players. Doesn't mean they.
And I think that's by design, right? That clearly is the way they're evaluating, and with how NIL is structured. Like, my guess is that has to be by design.
I think it is too.
Right? Yeah. Like they're going blue chip hunting more in the defensive line, offensive line, quarterback, and receiver is where that is. If you look at the way the depth chart is.
Definitely. And you also just look at the way Tennessee's been so hesitant to play young defensive backs. You spend a lot of time and resources to get these kids in, these big recruits, high school recruits in, and then you don't play them early. You're just at complete risk to lose them to the portal anyway. So I do think it makes sense to take guys that you think you can develop a guy or two a cycle that you feel like maybe can help you early, and then look at the portal ranks and maybe even be a little more aggressive than they have. I mean, I like the Jermon McCoy pickup a lot, but as we talked about on here, I think they should have been more aggressive at safety in the portal this offseason.
Turrentine's up on him, right? He's talking about him today. What was his quote? He hasn't seen a corner like make plays like McCoy's made since he's been at Tennessee. And Turrentine's been there for 3 years now. But yeah, so we'll see. I think ultimately, Tennessee fans who have been worried about secondary, I think corner's going to be good. My gut is corner is going to be good, and they're trending in the right direction there. Call your shot, Ryan Schumpert. Who leads the Vols in running back touchdowns this season? Which Vol running back at the end of the year has the most TDs?
Of any sort of
Jabari Small's gone. The Vulture TD man is gone.
But see, that's where you're wrong. That's where these stereotypes. It's like, this is the hardest one of any stat on the team to predict, in my opinion. Because Jabari Small had like 2 touchdowns last year.
What was it 2 years ago?
He had a ton 2 years ago.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Last year was just, everything was painful in the red zone. There wasn't a lot of Vulture opportunities last year, so we throw last year out the door.
But that's my whole point. Where 2 years ago, Jabari Small had like 12, and in 2023, Dylan Sampson had like 11, and Jalen Wright, who was arguably the best running back in the SEC, I think had 4 touchdowns, and basically all of them were long runs.
Yeah,
long run against Georgia, long run against UConn. So it's kind of anybody's guess is as good as another. I'll go Dylan Sampson because I think he's the best running back, and he's the one guy. I know Dylan Sampson's going to be in the rotation, and he's going to be getting a lot of carries. I feel good about the 3 guys behind him no disrespect to co-starter Khalifa Keith. Maybe he proves me wrong. He's a guy in the rotation too. But exactly how things are going to end up working out between those three starters of who gets the most carries and who really becomes the second guy to Dylan Sampson, to me, is a little bit up in the air. So due to that fact, I'll go with the safe bet and take Dylan Sampson.
I'm going to Desean Bishop. I think he might even lead the Vols in carries in the regular season. I think depending on how the season goes, they have to be careful. Like Dylan Sampson, I just think he's just a Swiss Army knife guy that you want come playoff time. Like you want Dylan Sampson as healthy and as ready to go. I think they're going to be careful with Dylan Sampson all fall. That's my gut. I think Desean Bishop's going to get a bunch of carries. The man already carried the ball for 1 billion times at Carnes. Yeah. Like the man's ready. He's ready for a big workload. He had a whole year off basically to recuperate from Carnes handing the ball off to him 47 times a game. So he was able to get some relief there. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those where my gut is he had a good fall camp. Desean is Cam's banged up. We'll see if Cam can stay healthy. Peyton Lewis, true freshman, is asking a lot. And I just think they're going to be careful with Dylan Sampson. I also think Dylan Sampson might have a couple different touchdowns just in the passing game. Like he's just more of a receiving running back threat than a lot of these guys before him. Like he's just a very different kind of running back than Jalen, Jabari, and guys before him. So I think Dylan Sampson's going to score touchdowns in different ways. Like he might actually lead Vol running backs in total touchdowns because I think he's going to have several touchdowns where he actually just catches it out of the flat and does stuff in space is my guess. But in terms of just running the football and like in the red zone, stuff like that I think that Tennessee is going to lean on, and someone who I think is not going to be wary of running through the tackles and just has done it a lot in his career. My gut is Desean Bishop. I think you're going to look at the back of the year. You're like, wow, Bishop had a lot of carries and a lot of touchdowns. And it wasn't like like he's not going to have these big runs. He's not going to just have all these iconic plays. I just think we're going to look at the end of the year and be like, wow, he actually had a lot more going on than I thought he did.
Desean Bishop, I think, is a completely fair prediction for touchdowns. If I wasn't going to do Dylan Sampson, that's probably who I did. And what you just said about him at the end, just with me without having literally ever watched him in a college game, because they don't ever let us watch anything that matters at practice. And obviously he was hurt last year. But I like the way you described that, because to me, I think he's going to be very Jabari Small-esque in that the yards that are there, he's going to get. I don't know if he's got this next gear to create a ton of huge plays, but I just think he's going to be very, very solid. So yeah, I think that's fair. I think he's a guy that could very easily end up being the second running back. I won't go as far as saying that would be my prediction, but I think it's going to be close between him and Selden. My gut tells me for sure that's the three to end up being the three in the rotation. Then if somebody gets hurt, we'll see who steps up. I don't agree with your whole they're going to play it safe with Dylan Sampson thing. Like maybe in some ways, maybe in the ways that they played it safe with Hendon Hooker running the ball, where in a lot of games they weren't going to ask Hendon to run a bunch. And I think Dylan will play those games, but maybe it's like we're not just going to completely. It'll be very even rotation, and we're going to get 3 guys equal reps. And then in the big games, all right, Dylan, you're our best guy. We got to go to you a lot. I can see it being that way, but I don't think it's going to be something where against Georgia or against Florida or against Oklahoma, even North Carolina State week 2, and that's the guy you trust. I think you're in those moments, you're still going to see Dylan Sampson, not a workload, not a true 1990s number 1 back, but he's going to be the clear number 1 in the room.
And for people who think we're joking, Desean Bishop, his junior and senior year, ran for I'm doing the math here in my head. He ran for over 6,000 yards between 2 years. He had so that can't be right. He did not have 64 touchdowns in 2 years.
I bet he did.
That's insane. And that's 700 carries. Numbers. Nearly 800 carries in 2 years. I told you I was joking about the 1,000 carries in high school. This man had an unbelievable amount of carries and touchdowns and everything. Like, we're not joking. The Desean Bishop Carnes offense is something that I saw up close on one event. But yeah, no, Desean Bishop, he knows how to be a running back. Is my broader point here. Cam Selden learning the position. Who's not learning the position? Desean Bishop. He's very familiar.
All respect to our brother Ethan Stone, who cannot be here, and the Carnes
legend.
But that's not a program that gets a Desean Bishop type talent and is like, we're gonna take it easy with them. They get a Desean Bishop, they're gonna use a Desean Bishop. There's not a lot of SEC football players coming through Carnes, so when they have one, they're gonna use them to the best of their ability to win games. Did you see
the Cleveland High School quarterback transferred to rival Bradley Central today?
No.
There was an injury to the Bradley Central quarterback, and the Cleveland quarterback who played for Cleveland this week transferred to Bradley Central.
I can't comment. If I comment, big trouble. I'm gonna say really mean things about a high schooler, and I shouldn't
Don't
that.
do it.
So no comment on the matter.
No, but yeah, I guess they still have to determine if he's eligible. But yeah, no, he came in relief for the other Cleveland quarterback, and then he I guess had a good showing, and now Bradley Central's quarterback got hurt, and he's transferring this week. So that's what I saw today in the Chattanooga Times Free Press. Schedule spotlight here, Ryan Schumpert. With Chattanooga, it's game week. What are you most curious about seeing on Saturday against the Mocs? What is your prediction in how different Tennessee's offense looks from last season? And then what's the new wrinkle potential that you think fans are first going to see on Saturday that we did not see last year?
Well, I think the thing I'm most intrigued or excited to see is the depth chart, since we didn't really get one today. What the rotations actually look like. Mm-hmm. I think what we've said all offseason, and everybody said all offseason, it's not a unique thought about the offense. They're going to be better creating chunk plays. They're going to be better, or the tempo is going to be back to being quicker. They're going to run at a much faster tempo. I don't know how much. What I want to see, I guess, is more efficient in the red zone. And again, it's Chattanooga, so it's not going to tell us a ton, but that's another big area for the offense that they need to be better. I think from a wrinkle standpoint, I think this offense really it's two things. And the one I think we could see more of this week is just throwing the ball to Ethan Davis. How much of a target is he, especially when it's not in the red zone? And then the other one is what you said a minute ago, and I don't think we'll see much of it this week, but just how many creative ways did they try to get Dylan Sampson the ball in the pass game? We obviously saw they ran the middle screen to him, little shovel pass screen to him a lot last year. Do we see more swing passes to him to get him the ball out on the perimeter? Those are the things that I don't think we'll see this week, but just this season could be a wrinkle that we see more of that we haven't seen a ton of in Heupel's offense the first 3 years.
I wonder if we see the downfield stuff, because we didn't see it in the Iowa game. Like, Nico obviously did a lot of design runs. Like, there was a lot of short stuff. I'm curious if they even show, because they're going to be careful with NC State the week after. I don't think they're going to show a whole lot, but I do wonder if we see some downfield stuff. What is your gut? Do you think we see some aerial shots that we just have not really seen in almost a year and a half almost?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we just didn't see him last year. It just felt like you didn't see him because there were so many in 22 and 21, and there weren't as many. And that's why I think we do see him this week. I don't know what the numbers look like, how many, but it's like, who are you fooling? Who you, North Carolina State, I haven't watched tape on Josh Heupel's offense ever. They don't know that you want to throw the ball vertically down the sidelines. Like, who are you fooling by not throwing the ball deep against Chattanooga? They know you're going to do that. They know that's a big staple of the offense. So maybe that doesn't mean that Tennessee won't. I don't know who Josh Heupel thinks he's fooling by listing James Pierce as a co-starter. I don't think he thinks he's fooling anybody. But my instinct says,
you got me.
My instinct says that we'll see them throw the ball down the field more in this game than we'll say they did against Virginia in the opener last year.
I think so too. I mean, the first play of the Virginia game was the Keaton drop, wasn't it? The 80-yard bomb that Keaton dropped, or was there a play before that?
I don't even know if that was the first drive, was it? It was
I
early.
It was. I thought it was.
It was early.
I swear it was the first play, and it was just a deep shot and right down the right-hand side, and Keaton dropped the touchdown. It was early.
I feel like I would remember if that was the first play, because it would have been a really fitting prelude to Tennessee's offense last season.
Maybe It was early. If it wasn't the first play, it was very, very early on. Are you looking it up?
Yeah, I'm looking for it, trying to find it now. First play was a 7-yard Jalen Wright run. It was not on the first drive. It was not on the second drive.
What?
It was the first play. It was the first play of the third drive. 6:03
Oh, wow.
left in the first quarter. Joe Milton pass incomplete to Ramel Keaton.
Third drive. I would have been wrong on that one. I thought it was the first drive. Early in the game, though.
Yeah, still 9 minutes into the game.
That's crazy, though. Also, when you look at I was looking at that time possession, too, and Florida State and Georgia Tech, they had such a limit. And, I'm over here looking at Virginia and Tennessee and, all the different possessions they already had in the first quarter alone.
Yeah.
And, that's, all it was in Georgia Tech, Florida State. I don't think that's how it's going to go against the Mocs here. Ryan Schumpert. What's your prediction score-wise? What do you think Tennessee does?
I wrote about this yesterday, so I should remember. The spread's 37 roughly in that ballpark. I think Tennessee covers. I think we see some version of a 49-7, 49-10, somewhere in that range. The beautiful thing about Tennessee playing Chattanooga in the opener and me getting to write about Chattanooga some is that I get to mention frequently this week that Chattanooga 2 losses to the Furman Paladins last year, who beat them in the essential SoCon championship game the second to last week of the regular season, and then turned around and beat them in the second round of the playoffs. It's going to be, Chattanooga number 8 in that preseason coaches poll, Furman number 9, only 2 SoCon teams in it. It's going to be another battle this year, but I think the Paladins have what it takes to go back-to-back.
Great stuff. FCS insider Ryan Schumpert logging in the SoCon.
Carson Jones, Maryville legend, supposed to be Furman starter this year.
What's happening? Where are you getting this intel from?
Well, my brother played football at Furman, so okay. I continue to keep up with Furman football.
Okay. Are you watching? What do you mean you're keeping up with Furman football? Are you grinding the tape? Are you actually watching? Yeah. You tapping into the Paladins?
I watched their playoff games or their games when Tennessee's
so you're
not playing.
Furman, how I am with UNC Asheville. I'm an Asheville Bulldog. I'm watching the 5-out basketball and Drew Pimber mania.
But as most of the time as it falls, they're playing while I'm working. So follow them on Twitter, have them highlighted on ESPN. So following the score and stuff most of the time. Still a heartbreaking loss to Montana. Incredible game in the FCS semifinals last year. Incredible game, heartbreaking loss.
They upset. Who did they upset in the tournament? Was it Virginia? No, who was it? Was it Virginia?
Virginia. Yep. Yeah. And that was where Tennessee was in Orlando. Opposite sides of the bracket, and so I was at that game. That was incredible.
You were at the game, the upset with the buzzer beater and everything?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because they played, I think the first game. I think Tennessee played the last game that day against Louisiana. But yeah, truly just true insanity. All-time bad turnover by Virginia in that spot.
That was bad. I remember Stan Van Gundy on the call was
yep,
just losing his mind. He's like, what are they doing?
He looked like a man that had a lot of money on Virginia.
Yeah.
Also, JJ Pegas, I think is how you pronounce his name, Hillsborough High School out of Nashville. He's the guy who hit that shot, transferred to Auburn this offseason. So JP Pegas, I think, actually, not JJ. But should be a name to get to know in the SEC this year because he had a really good career at Furman. I think he's going to be a contributor for Bruce Pearl down on the Plains.
There you go. Ryan Schumpert, what can the good folks check out from you over at RockyTopInsider.com this week?
Yeah, plenty of game week stuff. Everything to get you going for the start of the season. I'll have a conversation with Gene Henley of the Chattanooga Times Free Press later this week. We'll have that up. And then all our normal game week stuff, keys to the game, predictions. We'll have season predictions at some point this week. So finally getting in the groove of game week and everything you need to know ahead of Saturday's matchup, and then everything coming out of Saturday's matchup and into things really getting going next week against North Carolina State.
I love it. Ryan Schumpert, keep up the great work, and I'll talk to you next week.
Nicely done, nephew. The Chase Thomas Podcast. Hell yeah.